All right, good evening, gang, and welcome to this week's Keller Williams Greater Metropolitan Study Session. We're preparing for the Ohio Real Estate Salesperson Licensing Exam, and we're going to go ahead and dive right in. Guys, if you need anything specifically covered, throw it in the chat box. Let me know. Happy to cover it with you and for you. Looks like we got a couple people looking for agency law, so we'll go ahead. Maybe tonight we'll focus in on that state section, which broker relationships and agency law is going to be a big part of. Go ahead and get started here. As always, I'm going to read the question and the answers, A, B, C, D. Drop the answer in the chat. If you don't know the answer, if you're completely lost and befuddled, put a question mark in the chat box so we just know where everyone stands. All right, question number one. Sellers have informed a listing broker that if necessary to sell the property, they will accept $10,000 less than their asking price. Another agent in the firm finds out and informs the buyer about the $10,000 reduction. The second sales agent has signed the buyer to a buyer representation agreement with the same firm. What is the duty of the listing agent? Is it A, the seller may not sell the property to the buyer, B, the seller can sue the buyer for specific performance, C, the broker can sue the buyer, or D, the listing agent must offer to withdraw the listing? A, B, C, or D? Drop them in the chat box, guys. A lot of D's in the chat, and that is correct. If a client's confidentiality has been breached, then the offer to withdraw the listing must be made. Question number two. A listing agent offers a seller an inducement to lower the sales price to accept offer of a purchase contract. What is true? A, the agent must disclose this information to all parties. B, this arrangement is legal so long as the inducement is not more than the commission. C, the agent must disclose this information in any advertisement. Or D, this information may be kept confidential between the listing agent and the seller. All right, a lot of A's in the chat, and it's actually D. So this is not an inducement to the buyer. It's an inducement to the seller. So this is only an inducement between the listing agent and the seller. So those are the only parties motivated by this inducement. So they're the only parties that would have to know about this inducement. So there would be no need to disclose to the buyer that the listing agent executed an inducement. Now, if the buyer was making an inducement, or if the buyer was being induced to buy, that would have to show up in the purchase agreement. That would have to show up in the contract, such that all parties would have been disclosed the information around the inducement. Question number three. A sales agent is found guilty of a violation of the Ohio Revised Code involving non-disclosure of an agency relationship. What is the liability of the sales agent? A, jail term not to exceed 30 days. B, immediate revocation of the sales agent's license. C, criminal penalty of the 4th degree misdemeanor. Or D, a fine not to exceed $2,500. All right, lots of D's in the chat, and that is correct. The Ohio Real Estate Commission can fine a sales agent for an amount not to exceed $2,500 or suspend the license. Question number four, which fiduciary duty survives the termination of a real estate listing? Is it A, confidentiality, B, obedience, C, financing, or D, loyalty? The A's have it. That is confidentiality. It lasts forever, by the way, unless you're subpoenaed. Question number 5, a sales agent represents a seller in a listing. What are the agent's duty to the customer, AKA the buyer? Is it A, accountability, B, loyalty, C, care, or D, honesty and fairness? D is correct. You should treat all parties, clients, customers, and anybody involved in a transaction with honesty and fairness. Question number 6, a broker is representing a buyer. A buyer expresses an interest in a property that is advertised in the paper for sale by owner. The broker calls the seller and asks to show the property to the buyer. When must the consumer guide to agency be given to the seller? A, during the telephone conversation, the broker must disclose to the seller the fact that he represents the buyer. B, negotiating a sales contract. C, prior to the showing the seller's property. Or D, prior to sending the buyers to financing. A is the answer, and that is correct. It is your first substantive contact, and even if that is by phone, you should disclose that you are in fact an agent of the buyer, represent them, and have an agency relationship, and then get that signed upon arrival. Question number 7, a real estate licensee owes the fiduciary duty of confidentiality to the seller until A, the commission is paid, B, forever, C, 1 year after the contract expires, or D, when the contract expires. Yes, B is correct. Confidentiality lasts forever. It's the only one owed forever. Question number 8, a seller dies during a 90-day listing agreement. What is true? A, the sales agent can sue the seller's estate for specific performance. B, the agency is terminated by the operation of law. C, the broker can sue the seller's estate for specific performance. Or D, the agency agreement is still in full force and effect. Yep. If the person listing the property dies or the broker dies, then that listing agreement is going to be terminated. If the agent dies, it just transfers to another agent. And the right of specific performance is how buyers sue sellers, not brokers and agents. Question number 9, a broker lists a property that he owns personally. One of his sales agent produces a buyer. What must the broker do to avoid becoming a dual agent? Is it A, act as a split agent, B, be a dual agent, C, treat the buyer as a customer, or D, be a sub agent? Yep, C is correct. Have to treat them as a customer. Anything else would be acting as a dual agent. The only way to avoid dual agencies is for one party to be the client and the other one to be a customer. Question number 10, what is not a fiduciary duty of an Ohio real estate licensee? A, care, B, loan arranging, C, obedience, or D, accountability? Yes, it is B. Loan arranging is not a fiduciary duty. It is the acronym ACOLD, accountability, care, obedience, loyalty, and disclosure. Question number 11, when can a broker reveal confidential information about a client? A, under no circumstances. B, when the listing expires. C, never. Or D, under subpoena. Saw some C's come out in the chat real quick, but if you are under subpoena, you can reveal confidential information. There's no other circumstance in which you can, but if you are subpoenaed, it does require you to share that information. Question number 12. What is not the unauthorized practice of law? Which one of these is not? A, preparing a real estate land contract. B, preparing a lease. C, preparing a real estate sales contract. Or D, completing a pre-printed sales contract form. D is correct. Anytime you see preparing a contract or document, that is in fact writing it up. You cannot write up, you can fill in. Writing up a land contract is going to be unauthorized practice of law, or lease, or a contract. Question number 13, a broker takes a listing on a property. The sellers state that if necessary, they are willing to accept an offer of $5,000 less than the listing price. What is the obligation of the broker to the buyer? A, the broker may not disclose what the seller said about the price reduction. B, the broker has no duty whatsoever to the buyer. C, the broker owes the first fiduciary duty to the buyer. Or D, the broker must disclose to the buyer the sellers have come down $5,000. So we got some A's and some D's. We got more A's, which that's good because it's correct. So the difference here is it says that they're willing to accept a lower offer. That does not mean that they've reduced the price. If they reduce the price, then yeah, you would update any potential buyers. There's been a price change, you change your marketing. But if they're just willing to accept a lower offer, you cannot disclose that. It's just information that they've shared, and that confidentiality is owed only to the client in this situation. That confidential information, rather. Question number 14, what duties are owed to a third party, a customer involved in a real estate transaction? A, duty to represent. B, duty to obtain financing. C, duty to advocate. Or D, a duty to treat honestly and fairly. You know, anyone who's not your client's your customer, honesty and fairness. Question number 15, a real estate agent is selling a Ohio property that is owned by a resident of Indiana, and it's going to be bought by somebody in Florida. The real estate licensee must be licensed in A, Ohio, B, Indiana, C, Florida, or D, both Indiana and Florida. A is correct. You only have to be licensed in the state where the property is, where the buyer is, where the seller is, and even where you are is irrelevant. You have to have a license to transact real estate in the state where that property is. Question number 16, at what point in time must an agent give a buyer the consumer guide to agency relationships? A, prior to the second showing of the house that was open. B, at a closing. C, at the loan application table. Or D, prior to showing the property at an open house. All right, so the open house is always going to be one that trips people up, but open houses do not count as substantive contacts, right? It's an open house. They're not there specifically at the behest of the agent. So the consumer guide to agency is not required. You wouldn't have, if you ever walk through an open house, you know, not everyone there is filling out a consumer guide to agency. However, if you hold the house open and then somebody calls you back and says, hey, you know, I want to see 123 Main Street again, that is where you are then entering into an agency relationship. That is a substantive contact, and that requires a consumer guide to agency. Question number 17, a licensed sales agent is contemplating selling her own property. What must the sales agent do to comply with Ohio law? A, disclose in the listing that she is a sales agent. B, disclose the type of lending being offered. C, disclose in any advertisement that the property is being sold for sale by owner by an owner agent, or D, disclose the type of agency being offered. C is going to be right here. You have to disclose it on the listing, in the listing, but you also have to disclose it everywhere that you advertise, including the sign in the yard for sale by owner agent. Question number 18, a buyer signs an agreement to purchase a home. The seller has not provided a property disclosure form. When the buyer requests the property disclosure form, the seller refuses to provide it. What rights are available to the buyer? A, the buyer may rescind the contract. B, a buyer may request only the seller deliver a property disclosure statement within 3 business days after the agreement has been signed. C, the buyer may sue for liability, or D, the buyer may sue for 3 times the damages for defects not shown. All right, looks like the A's have it, and that's going to be correct. They can rescind the contract. If they refuse to do it, they can't sue for liability. If you finish and execute the contract or complete the contract, you're waiving that right to do so. So you can break the contract if they refuse to provide one. Question number 19, a listing broker is holding an open house and a buyer walks in and views the property. The buyer does not like the property, but asks to be shown another house down the street. 2 days later, before the showing the other property, the broker calls the buyer and asks for specific financial information to determine the price range the buyer can afford. Then the broker sends the buyer to a local bank for pre-qualification. After pre-qualification, the broker shows the property that was originally requested. When must the consumer guide to agency be completed? A, when the buyer went for pre-qualification. B, prior to requesting financial information. C, prior to showing the home. Or D, at the open house. A lot of C's. I think you guys took the bait. The correct answer is prior to requesting specific financial information. Now, even though that was over the phone, it is considered a substantive contact. The first substantive contact is asking for specific financial information over the phone. That is something that would happen from an agent and an agent-client relationship, not necessarily in a customer relationship. So if they, now let's redo the scenario. If they are walking down the street, or if they're at the open house and they're like, hey, I want to see this place down the street, and they walk right down the street and go into that house, that is then the first substantive contact, right? So it is not necessarily you have to do this thing or this thing or this thing. There's a series of things that can be considered substantive contacts that would trigger the consumer guide to agency, and it's only whichever one happens first. Question number 20, a sales agent is interested in buying some property. The sales agent walks through the seller's house, but does not mention being a sales agent. What is true? A, the sales agent has violated no laws. B, the sales agent is not allowed to buy the property without the broker being involved. C, the sales agent has violated the fiduciary duty owed to the seller. Or D, the sales agent must disclose during the walkthrough the fact that the sales agent is buying the property for his own use and purposes. A's and D's, A's and D's. Somebody want to share why they think it's one or the other? You guys are pretty well split.
The sales agent doesn't have to disclose that they're a sales agent until they actually make a purchase agreement or an offer.
That is correct. Viewing the home does not require disclosure, but when a contract is put forth, there has to be disclosure that the buyer is an agent buying for their own purposes. Great job. Right. What else do we want to cover tonight? Let's hit one of these two state ones. Licensing requirement or license law and rules of the Ohio Real Estate Commission. Which one do you want for the other part of the state exam? License laws and rules of the Ohio Real Estate Commission. All right. Question number one, a buyer makes an offer to purchase a house and gives the seller until midnight, 3 days hence to accept the offer. Prior to acceptance, the buyer withdraws the offer. What's true? A, the buyer may not withdraw the offer. B, there's a contract since the buyer made the offer. C, the buyer must wait until the end of 3 days. Or D, the buyer is allowed to withdraw the offer prior to the time of acceptance. Yeah, D is correct here, guys. Anytime prior to the acceptance, the offer can be withdrawn. That's the right of the seller. There's no contract made. There's no obligations there. You put an offer out there. People don't like it. You can take it back. Question number two, what would be a violation of Ohio licensing law? Would it be A, making earnest money check payable to the seller's broker? B, making earnest money deposit check payable to the salesperson? C, making the earnest money deposit check payable to the buyer's broker? Or D, making it payable to the seller? And the B's are going to have it on this one. Basically, that check can go to anybody on the planet in any form except the salesperson. That is forbidden by Ohio law. Question number three, a sales agent is advertising his firm's listed property in the local newspaper. The sales agent must make sure that A, the agent's name and the broker's name are in the same font. B, the agent's name and the broker's name are in different colored type. C, the broker's name appears in equal or greater prominence to that of the agent. Or D, the agent's name and the broker's name are the same size. Yes, equal or greater prominence is your trigger. That's what you want, and that's what you ought to do. Question number four, a buyer makes an offer on a property. The seller issues a counteroffer, which the buyer signed and the selling agent delivered to the listing agent. The buyer passes a FSBO he likes better. He makes an offer on the FSBO and the seller accepts. Which statement's true here? A, the contract on the first house is not enforceable. B, neither is enforceable. C, both are valid. Or D, only the first one is valid. Yeah, unfortunately, this guy just bought 2 houses. There's both contracts are valid. There's nothing in the contract that says that, it has pole position or that it gets accepted first or second. I mean, you can buy 2 houses at once if you so choose. Question number 5, what language does the state statute require in a listing agreement? Is it A, a full legal description of the property, B, an explanation of fair housing, C, the definition of steering, or D, a statement that blockbusting is illegal? You'll find most listing agreements have a lot of these, but the only one that is required is a statement that blockbusting is illegal. Question number 6. An auditor appointed by the Ohio Superintendent's Office asks to review a broker's records. What must the broker make available? Is it A, their personal property taxes, B, the sales contracts but not the listings, C, sales contracts and listings whether or not they've ever been sold, or D, the broker's income tax returns? He's right. Anything and everything, whether or not it sells. Personal records not required here. It's only in relation to the real estate contracts. Question number 7. A broker receives a client's earnest money check and deposits it into his trust account prior to closing. However, the broker needs money to pay monthly overhead expenses. He borrows some money from the trust account, fully intending to replace it. The broker is guilty of what? A, misrepresentation, B, conversion, C, condemnation, or D, commingling. Lots of D's and one B. Two B's. Nice job, Khadijah. So putting funds in the wrong account is commingling. Using funds from one account for anything other than their intended purpose is conversion. So conversion is the right answer here, right? Conversion is theft or fund converting, and commingling is depositing the right things in the wrong accounts. Question number 8. Although not mandated by statute, the Ohio Division of Real Estate recommends that for the purpose of document handling and record keeping, A, all agents have access to all files. B, only the agent who works a file has access. C, all files be listed on the internet for public access. Or D, a non-licensed clerical employee should have control of all files. D is correct. That is their recommendation. All files be kept under lock and key and managed by a non-licensed clerical individual. Question number 9. Broker receives an earnest money payment. The broker deposits the earnest money into his trust account. By law, what is the amount of interest the broker may bear from this account? A, the minimum for state usury laws, B, 0, C, 4, or D, 10%. Yeah, B, it's 0%, guys. No, non-interest bearing accounts are where brokers must deposit the trust or the earnest money and things of that nature. No interest bearing. And question number 10, if given the choice, what type of listing agreement would a seller probably prefer? What type of listing agreement are they most likely to prefer? Is it an open listing, B, a net listing, C, an exclusive right to sell, or D, an exclusive agency agreement? Which one would the seller prefer? So the trick here, and this is again a poorly worded question, so we got to make some inferences. But okay, so you think like an open listing, you know, that means they got the maximum number of people trying to sell this property. Everybody's going to be working and hustling to sell for them. That might not necessarily be considered the best thing. Well, there's a net listing, so then they get exactly what they want from the netting sale in the house. The exclusive right to sell, they're locked into one realtor. The exclusive agency, they're locked into one realtor. However, if they find their own buyer, they bring their own buyer, they don't have to pay a commission. So the answer is actually D here, because that's the only one where they wouldn't have to pay a commission. Question number 11. An agent wishes to specialize in the sale of commercial properties. What should they do? Should they A, have done at least 20 residential deals? B, find a broker that specializes in the sales of commercial property? C, stay with the same brokerage? Or D, seek additional education in order to be licensed to sell commercial real estate? Yep, and C is gonna be correct. Ohio license law says there's no additional requirements for the sale of commercial real estate. Your license is good for the sale to help people buy and sell and invest in commercial real estate, just like residential. However, at our brokerage, just so everybody's aware, you do have to partner with one of our commercial agents and take some additional training courses to be able to do that. But we do allow the sale of commercial real estate in our office. Question number 12. Who approves the appointment of an ancillary trustee when a broker dies? A, the division, B, the commission, C, the probate court, or D, the Department of Commerce? C is correct. Anytime someone dies, the probate court is going to be involved. For a minimum of how many years must the broker keep records? A, 5, B, 1, C, 3, or D, 2? C3 is correct. Question number 14. A salesperson asks that the broker return her license to the Division of Real Estate so she may transfer to a new broker. The sales agent makes the request in a certified letter, but after 10 days, the broker has not mailed the division. What is true? A, the sales agent will lose their license. B, the broker owns the agent's license and may decide not to return it. C, the broker could lose his license for failing to return the agent's license. Or D, the sales agent must wait for the broker to return the license. C is correct. The broker could lose their license for not complying. Question number 15. Who administers real estate license law? Is it A, the police, B, the division, C, the Department of Commerce, or D, the Real Estate Commission? D is correct. The Division of Real Estate administers license law. Question number 16, broker X is managing a client's 5-unit apartment complex. The broker receives rent deposits of $100 from each unit. What must the broker do with those rent deposits? A, deposit them with the property management account in the client's name. C, commingle the funds in B, commingle the funds in a trust account. C, deposit them in the office management account, or D, deposit them in the broker's trust account. A is going to be correct. Property management accounts require a separate account for each client and each property. And so if a deposit is taken for that, then they must be sure to deposit that in the appropriate account. Question number 17. A buyer makes an offer to buy a house and faxes the offer to the seller in another state. The seller, upon receipt, signs the offer, intending to mail it back to the buyer the next morning. In the meantime, the buyer telephones the seller and withdraws the offer. What is true in this scenario? A, there is a contract or contact as the seller, there is a contract, that should say contract, as the seller has accepted the buyer's offer. B, there's never a rightful offer because the offer was faxed. C, both parties are now bound to the terms of the contract. Or D, there is no contract as acceptance has not been delivered to the buyer. D is correct here. Without communicating that acceptance, there's not been a meeting of the minds, and this contract is not complete. Question number 18, buyers make an offer to purchase property and to place $1,000 in earnest money into the broker's trust account. The sellers want the earnest money check made payable to them instead. The sales agent should A, ignore the seller's request as it is illegal, and the sales agent does not have to follow an illegal request. B, not present the offer to the sellers. C, write a counteroffer stipulating the seller's request. Or D, tell the sellers that the sales agent may accept the check made payable to the broker only. Yeah, C is going to be the winner here, guys. Just write a counteroffer and say this is how we want the earnest money stuff delivered. Question number 19, a buyer is going to make an offer on a seller's home. The listing agent asks the buyer for $1,000 in earnest money. The buyer does not want to give $1,000 in earnest money, but the listing agent says it's state law. What statement is true? A, the buyer must give $1,000 in earnest money. B, earnest money is set by state law. C, earnest money is set by federal law. Or D, the listing agent is wrong. There is no state law governing earnest money. Yes, you guys nailed that. Earnest money is negotiable. It's not required. There's no set stipulations. So there's that is incorrect. Question number 20. A broker and seller agree verbally that the broker will assist the seller in finding a buyer. The broker then finds a buyer for the seller, and the seller refuses to pay the broker a commission. What statement is true? A, the broker can recover under the statute of frauds. B, the broker cannot recover because the listing was not in writing. C, the seller can sue the sales agent can sue the seller for not paying the commission. Or D, the seller must pay the commission. B is correct. Listing agreements don't count and are not enforceable if they are not in writing. Got to make sure they're in writing, guys. Got to make sure that they are in writing. All right, probably got time for one more short section. So what are you guys thinking, feeling? What do you need to, what do we need to hit on here? Probably got time for one more section, a quick chat about tests and all that fun stuff. Leasing or licensing or financing. Let's do licensing requirements. Probably won't get through. Oh, it's only 10 questions. This will be perfect. An agent's 30 hours of continuing education are due on their birthday. A, 4 years after the license was issued. B, 3 years after the license was issued. C, every year. Or D, 3 years after the division receives a certificate showing the completion of his or her 10 hours of post licensing. What do we think here, gang? B's, lots of B's in there. 30 hours are due. 30 hours are due on the agent's birthday 3 years after the license was issued. And every 3 years from then on. Question number 2. How often must a sales agent complete the 30 hours of required continuing education? A, every 3 years until age 67, every 3 years coinciding with the agent's birthday. B, C, by the end of the month of the 3rd year, or D, once every 3 years, the date the license was issued. Yes, same question twice in a row. Sorry about that. It is, in fact, on your birthday every 3 years. Question number 3, a broker sent salesperson B's license back to the Ohio Division of Real Estate. What statement below is true? A, the agent requested in writing that the license be sent back by the broker, and the broker has 3 days to honor the request and must inform the agent in writing that the request has been acted upon. B, the broker must send an agent a registered letter 30 days before sending the license back because the license requires the broker to give 30 days notice. C, if the Ohio division requested the return, the broker does not have to send a letter to the agent. Or D, the broker cannot send the agent's license back until the agent's birthday. A, the agent requested in writing the license be sent back. The broker has 3 days to comply with the request. Since the agent requested that the license sent back, the broker is required to do so. Question number 4, if an agent had his broker send his license back to the Ohio Division of Real Estate because he took a job that left him no time to sell real estate, the license is considered A, on deposit, B, canceled, C, suspended, or D, inactive. There's a lot of different words that people will use for this. Inactive is the one that the state uses, and that's the only one that you need to know about. That is, in fact, what it's called. Salesperson joined the Army. A license is considered to be A, on deposit, B, in escrow, C, on inactive status, or D, revoked because the tour of duty is more than 2 years. All the A's in there, and that is correct. There's no such license status as in escrow. On deposit status is for an indefinite period of time. And that is what happens with the, let's see, what's the, yeah, military may put their license on deposit and it will not be revoked. That's the key there. If a sales agent passes the real estate exam in October, his license must be renewed, A, on his next birthday and no later than his or her third birthday every third year thereafter, B, in October the following year, C, on or before January 1st the following year, or D, December of that year. All right, A, on his next birthday and every third year thereafter. Question number 7. How much continuing education must a licensee who turns 70 years of age take in her CE cycle? Is it A9, B30, C6, or D15? All right, A's have it, and yes, they're only required to take the 9 core classes, no longer requiring the 21 electives. Number 8, who is responsible for renewing a sales agent's license every year? Is it A, the Ohio Board of Realtors, B, the sales agent, C, the agent's broker, or D, the Ohio Real Estate Commission? Yes, it is the agent's responsibility. Is your responsibility. It'll always be your responsibility. We will remind you, we will help you, we will provide CE, but it is always your responsibility to execute that renewal. Question number 9, in order to maintain an Ohio real estate license, a sales agent must complete 20 hours post-licensing course, A, on or before the birthday following their date of licensure, B, consisting of 3 hours, consisting of 3 hours of ethics, C, before the end of the year in which the license is received, or D, within 1 year of receiving the license. So this is one that can trip people up. Your license renews on your birthday. Your post-licensing coursework is due on the day you're 1 year before, 1 year later, the day your license was issued. So your birthday's January 1st and you get licensed in June 1st, you're going to renew your license on January 1st, but your post-licensing needs to take place before June 1st. And our final question of the evening, what portion of a salesperson's license application fee is deposited in the Real Estate Education and Research Fund? Is it A, $1, B, $6, C, $8, or D, $4? It is $1 when you apply. You pay $81, and $1 of each license fee application is credited to the Education and Research Fund. All right, guys, we hit all of the big state sections tonight, so everyone should be feeling real strong on that front. As a reminder, gang, if you are if you have not scheduled your exam and you need help doing that, you haven't heard from PSI, please let us know, let us help you. If you have scheduled your exam, please make sure that myself and Gina know what that day is so we can wish you luck and follow up with you. If you have not yet applied, I encourage you, once you're completed with your classes, please do that so we can help you get all that squared away and make sure that you are able to test and start your real estate career as soon as possible. If you have attempted to test and not pass and need a retake, let us know about that. Just wherever you're at in the process, make sure we know. If you don't know what your next step is, please just ask. Guys, you did not go through real estate school, so you could do a bunch of time talking to me on Zoom on Tuesday nights. So take advantage of this as a way to get on into your real estate career. We'll be really excited to have you once you pass. And as always, if you need anything, let me, let Gina, let any member of our team know, and we will be really excited to help you. All right. Have a wonderful evening, gang. We'll see you next week.